It's the X-class flares that are the real juggernauts. Although X is the last letter, there are flares more than 10 times the power of an X1, so X-class flares can go higher than 9. The most powerful flare on record was in 2003, during the last solar maximum. It was so powerful that it overloaded the sensors measuring it. They cut out at X17, and the flare was later estimated to be about X45. A powerful X-class flare like that can create long-lasting radiation storms, which can harm satellites, and even give airline passengers flying near the poles small radiation doses. X-flares also have the potential to create global transmission problems and worldwide blackouts. The seriousness of an X-class flare pointed at Earth is why NASA and NOAA constantly monitor the sun. NASA's heliophysics fleet of spacecraft can now see the sun from every side and in many different wavelengths.
In the Bible, we learn that after the flood, God gave Noah a promise that there would never again shall be a flood to destroy the earth. So Noah and his children would never have to experience a flood again. In many circles, they believe that if the planet is going to be destroyed, it would be done by fire. In the Bible, Book of Revelation, it talks about Armageddon, and many people believe that it would be a nuclear war. As we go into Wiki, and we put in the day, August 7th, 1972, which was a Monday, they have here, on that day at 1519 GMT, or 1119 EDT, the most powerful solar flare ever measured was observed on Earth. Then as we put that into Google, most people don't know that on August 7th, 1972, the greatest solar flare in the history of the planet occurred.
Hello, galactic travelers. Galactic information, galactic mission information. Online today. It is June 26th, 2018, the day before the full moon in Capricorn. And I want to share with you guys some information. So, guys know my story. Hopefully, if you don't, I had a shock activation last May 2017, and I have been going through a purification process. And we all have been. We've been upgrading and evolving so much, right? Getting pulled to different dimensions. And so this is a little information of how this whole project got started, and the experiment that started in Egypt, and how successful it was, which is why everything's changing right meow. Okay, real quick to Thoth and the other ascended masters. Remember, all the ascended masters are here incarnate right now, same with the pharaohs. So going back to Thoth and the other ascended masters, when we started creating the Christ consciousness grid. The Christ consciousness, remember, as above, so below. So when we talk about this, not just think of it as planets and objects, but think of it as blood and inside the body, right, that are activating our templates. And now, since we've completely connected the OA and our plasma is connected and we're in the collective consciousness, which is what we started, that is the Christ consciousness grid. And it's actually been here since 1980, but we had to be conscious, okay, to connect to it. So it was the biggest thing that ever happened, okay, and this comes from Anthony R. Curtis in the Space Almanac. He called it the most intense solar storm ever recorded. According to Science News, the early days of August saw a severe disturbance on the sun that produced 4 major flares between August 2nd and August 7th. The ones recorded in early August were among the most major ever recorded. The August 7th flare ran the X-ray sensors off the scale. The solar wind, which has an average velocity of 500 kilometers per second or 1,000,000 miles per hour, so the Earth normally spins at 1,000,000 miles. The solar wind, sorry, not spins, but the solar wind was 1,000,000 miles per hour normally. Okay? The August 7th flare got up to 2.5 million miles an hour. Okay, so it went from 1 million, the solar flare came in, sped up to 2.5 million, and this is where the numerology gets interesting, for 3 days, and then drops down to 1.5 million miles an hour for exactly 30 days. And it was considered impossible. And then it just dropped back down to normal, okay? Accounts of the event were published in all the major scientific literature of the world and many of the major newspapers, but scientists didn't know what it meant. All they did was publish the data. And after 6 months, Suzuki called a worldwide scientific meeting to discuss the implications of the explosion. John Bali left him about 3 months before he doesn't know what happened at the gathering. What he does know in the previous meeting, that is, from August to November 1972, there was a great amount of information published and written about this. But after the meeting in June or July of 1973, there was a total worldwide blackout, just as if the great event had never happened. This video, because this is important stuff. So I want to now just talk about, this solar flare. We'll talk about the races that came in, and then we'll stop. If the Syrians hadn't intervened, it would have killed everything on the planet, right down to the level of microbes and algae. And so what really happened was that our sun was about to expand in a giant red pulse out to the orbit of Jupiter or thereabouts. For 5 billion years or so, ours has been a hydrogen sun, where 2 hydrogen atoms fuse together to make helium. This has been the source of light and life on the Earth. When the helium that has been building up reaches critical mass, you get another reaction, with 3 helium atoms coming together to form carbon. At that moment, the sun pulses. A shifting of the sun poles also took place as a result of the bubble, 2/3 the size of the sun, forming it on the surface. If we had been prepared for this is consciously prepared, if we were on the Christ consciousness level or higher, we would have just tuned into it and would have been a beautiful trip. But since we had fallen so far in awareness from the events in Atlantis 16,000 years ago, we certainly were not prepared. So these shifts were happening without us. We needed a rescue team to come wake us up. The Syrians not only had the hardware, this is what we just talked about, they had, the galactic ambassadors to intervene. There was a galactic council. The only many meetings, the only reason we were able to intercede was because it would have been total devastation. Nothing would have lived. If there would have been the possibility of one person or human surviving or anything on the planet, then we would have not been given permission to even come and ascend into this lower density as starseeds to help ascend the planet at this time. After receiving permission, the Syrians immediately went to work and within 30 days had everything in place. After 440, they launched the large cigar-shaped object just outside the membrane of consciousness of the Earth, the plasma membrane, at 440,000 miles out, and they placed an overtone higher so it was invisible to us. They placed the 8 flying saucer-type ships on the apexes of the 8 tetrahedron points. That is the 8 points of the star tetrahedron around the Earth. There is a star tetrahedron inscribed around the Earth. This is also a much bigger one, around 10,000 miles above the surface. The points are the chakra system of the planets. I was having this ancient knowing that I needed to plant the Earth, plant a new Gaia, and I did. And my soul guided me to go out in the new moon at a certain time when the moon was strongest, before I even knew what moons were, and do like a ceremony. And I went back and listened. I didn't even know that I had taped it, and just found out that I did, and listened to it. And one of the things that I was channeling was Rays of black and white. I only want color within my sight. Rays of black and white. I only want color within my sight. So I find that interesting because it just links back to what we just said.